Well, I think the GOP benefits if that happens.
Really?
I believe
you are listening to Kaisers Kastle.
What made Donald Trump so successful in 2016 was that he turned out people who hadn't voted in some time or never voted, had never even registered to vote before. The numbers are there. The numbers prove that. What scares me, though, is that people that are voting in this midterm election don't account for checks
folks,
and balances.
We're joining.
They're voting completely
Veterans Radio Syndicate
for Donald Trump and his agenda, not even for what the candidate they're going to cast a vote for stands for. They're going to go out and vote for whoever Donald Trump tells them to vote for.
And I want you to hear everything.
That's scary power.
So
whether you support Donald Trump or not, that's scary power.
But I wanted to.
Do you think it is because that
just introduce
the left and now the right has become obstructionist?
I will be quiet now.
Oh, listen, you know.
I mean, because here's. Go ahead.
No. Looking at
left and now the right
comments on, you know, not only VRS News' content, but anybody's content, it has become a battleground. Social media, you mentioned social media earlier. Social media has become such a battleground when it comes to politics now because people don't have to sit face to face and worry about what they're going to say to a person. Is it going to hurt their feelings? Is it the right thing to say? There's no civil discourse. You can hide behind your computer. You can be that, you know,
that internet
social
troll.
Justice warrior, that internet troll, whatever you want to call it, and be as mean as you want to be,
right?
And be as visceral as you want to be. And it's scary. The things that these people say to one another, and the outright lies, just making crap up left and right. Like, I posted something this evening on the news page. I covered the live feed of President Trump and the First Lady handing out candy to little kids at the White House.
Right.
Right? So many Trump supporters said he's the first president to ever do this. This is such a wonderful man. I mean, these people have not been attuned to politics or anything ever and don't even realize that it was Bill and Hillary Clinton that started the candy handing, you know, the trick-or-treating and stuff at the White House. George Bush didn't do it at all. Obama did it every year with Michelle Obama, every year with the exception of the year Sandy went through the D.C. area, and they couldn't do it because of weather. I mean, these people have revisionist history, but they're following the lead of the leader of their party, Donald Trump, who's constantly just making stuff up every day. And listen, this is coming from somebody who voted for Donald Trump.
Well, here's what I think. Here's what I think is happening, and this is my review on this. One of the problems is that this is Donald Trump's first political position, okay, and as a result of it, he hasn't had to play politics in life ever. And in doing so, this is a critique. I think somebody needs to take Twitter away from him. I think the problem is that we have had other presidents give measured responses. You know, saying, okay, listen, we will give a measured response on this. We'll give a measured response on that. We'll say, no, this isn't, we'll look into that, or not give an answer. Donald Trump doesn't do that. He's like, whatever. He attacks, he attacks the media. He attacks the people that are talking to him, and he does so in a manner that isn't measured. And I think that is something that's hurtful to the narrative, because he is, he doesn't know how to be a political voice where Obama was, where George Bush was, where Clinton was the best. Slick Willie could walk himself. It just depends on what the word "is" means, and that's and so partly with that is the one issue with that is the fact that I think we expect measured response. We expect political responses, and that's not what we're getting right now. What we're getting is, Trump says, fake news. He's the first president to call the press fake, but at the same time, they brought it out on themselves. I mean, this isn't. There's reliability on both sides to say, do you want to disavow the wrong? And that's not what we're doing right now. I'll give you an example, and I want to pick CNN for a reason. CNN, when they did a news story, they had Nancy Grace in the parking lot right next to another reporter and made it look like it was two different things when the bus was coming right by. And they've done that numerous times. I'm not saying that is right. I'm not saying that is wrong, but it gives you a false view of events. When the Trayvon Martin case happened, they used a picture of when Trayvon Martin was 12. Now, regardless of what you think about Trayvon Martin, let's not get stuck on that. I'm saying they try to force the narrative to their view of the conflict. And as
of course, well, listen, in my opinion, mass media has gone so long unchecked.
Mm-hmm.
And, as interesting and as dynamic as 24-hour cable news was at the outset in 1981 or in 80 when CNN hit the airwaves as the news channel, CNN, the news channel, there was just never going to be enough 24/7 news.
Right.
That they started going towards more entertainment in the evening, and then with all the advent of all the other 24/7 cable news networks, it's that rush to get there first or to be different, and it bred this, exaggeration of reality.
Well, and it's not just an exaggeration of it's not just an exaggeration of reality. It is the exaggeration of the truth. I mean, it just you take a look at let's use the Iranian argument. The 150 billion that we returned to Iran was their money, and
it was their money. It was their money, and we were demanded by the World Court to give it back to them after we held it hostage for 40 years.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. I have no issue. I think one of the things that, and here's one of my suggestions, and I had this argument with a friend of mine today, because what we've done is also we've crafted a message that is just disproportionately false. I think we ought to pass an amendment in the United States, a national law. You are not allowed to fly a flag in the United States of an enemy that has declared war on the United States. Simple enough. You can't fly the Japanese flag in the United States. You can't fly the Nazi flag. You can't fly any flag that that declared war on the United States, and it's conspiring with foreign powers. You shouldn't be able to fly that flag. But
of all the issues in the world, why that issue?
And I'll tell you the reason why. Because you talked about revisionist history, okay? You talked about revisionist history. That revises a history narrative that is just completely false. And so we've had, these white nationalists, and I don't want to get into, I'm going to cover that in the second part of the show, but you have people rallying around symbolism that shouldn't exist. It's completely false. And so as a result of that, they create a new storyline. They create a storyline that just fits their needs. Ferguson wasn't about Mike Brown. Regardless of how you break it down, Ferguson wasn't about Mike Brown. He just happened to be the catalyst. And what it does is, I think at the time it would relieve some of these fringe groups from being able to dictate the narrative, and that's what's happening today. And that's what bothers me, and that's what scares me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think
what scares me is that here's what scares me the most. I think we fail as a country when one political party completely dominates the conversation. It has become so apparent that the Democratic Party, and we've done this to ourselves as a country, we've allowed two political parties to dominate the political system over the last century or so, which was not the way our founding fathers had it set up. But we've allowed two political parties to dominate, and now one political party, the Republican Party, is completely dominating the conversation. The Democrats have no viable message that's being heard by anyone going into this midterm election. If they pick up seats, it's because they must have had some incredible ground game that we were not aware of. Because when you look at social media, the Democratic Party virtually has no social media presence.
No.
And I follow very, very closely. You look at all the organizations out there that carry the president 24/7. Rarely do you see anybody from the Democratic side getting decent airtime. And they're out there speaking.
Maybe the only one I can even say is Beto, or Beto.
Yeah, I mean, Obama spoke the other night. We carried that on VRS News. That actually, I was shocked, had more shares by Republicans into Republican groups than I've ever seen. And it's because politics has become a blood sport. They just wanted to bash it left and right.
Mm-hmm.
And no one listens to the message. No one listens to the words. It's just an opportunity to stick the knife in and turn it. But the Democrats really have no organization. The party is broke. Obama left the party broke. I understand why Hillary Clinton did what she did when she was running for president when it came to fundraising, because the party was broke. But it led to Bernie Sanders getting pushed out of the way, etc.
Well, here's the one thing that too is that it's something to me and you talked about the other night on is that was really scary, was the amount of money the DNC is down, and I'm talking across the board, and I'm not talking about in areas that even I'll give you an example. The Oregon 47th is an uncontested seat in Portland that is 99% Democrat, and they're good for raising money. They haven't raised any of it. They've raised like under $500,000, and they're just not raising money. And here's the problem that I think this reminds me of the 1982 election when Reagan first got into office. Man, he was an unpopular president. Ted Kennedy had talked about impeaching him in 81. They were really, Reagan was very unpopular. Even after the assassination attempt, he was very unpopular. People go and revisit history and go, "Oh my God, Reagan was a saint." No,
please, Republicans today, if they really knew what Reagan stood for, they wouldn't vote for him.
Well, I don't know that
he believed in responsible gun law.
Oh yeah.
He didn't believe in assault weapons and everything else. Even it shocked me. Even though I was young, I heard it because my father was a union leader. I grew up in a very liberal household. But it shocked me that even blue-collar Democrats who were union members voted for Reagan, even after he fired the striking Patco employees.
Even after he fired which employees are you talking about? The air traffic.
The air traffic controllers.
I think he did that as a response, and I think people, when he did that as a response, I think he did that on purpose. Here's the issue that I had with him. Here's the one of the things with Reagan. He was a centrist. He believed in, and a lot of the things that he believed in, would be unpopular today.
Of course. And if he would have ran in 2016,
he'd have been a rhino.
With Donald Trump in the field, Donald Trump would have ran up one side and down the other over Ronald Reagan.
Right.
Ronald Reagan knew the art of compromise. It worked very, very well with Tip O'Neill, who was the Speaker of the House at the time, and they got things done. But Republicans today look at Ronald Reagan as a saint, like you said, and he raised taxes. He compromised with Democrats to raise.
And well, here's the thing, and I want to tell you something that I've said this on my show numerous times, and I've said this on numerous occasions. He raised taxes on idle corporate capital. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that didn't change until Rule 127 of the FASB rewritten in 1997, and basically here's what he did, and this is what drove the economy to this. He said, if you have idle capital, we're going to tax it, and what it basically did, it made companies spend money. They had to go out and spend money, because if you had it on your balance sheet, you're going to get a carrying charge. In and hold on, there's a second part to this, because what led to the boom of the late 90s was the FASB Rule 127 was that if you carry debt on your balance sheet that didn't, that if you were doing lease payments, FedEx leased $1.1 billion of aircraft, and that didn't go on their balance sheet as debt. Those were, and a lot of this happened, and this is, again, because both sides, you had Newt Gingrich in the House who said, hey, listen, Newt Gingrich and Clinton. I know a lot of people didn't like Clinton, but I mean, Clinton was at least a centrist. He said, okay, we can compromise on that. We can say, okay, fine, we're not going to take it into a place where we're going to argue over and over and over again. And we got things done. I don't see that happening today. I don't see anybody on the left or the right compromising for national interest.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, listen, to go back what I was saying earlier about one political party completely dominating the conversation, Democrats don't have a leg to stand on. They don't even have enough power to get to the table to say, hey, we'll stop this, we'll do this, we'll do. They don't have that. I mean, it's scary. Right. It is scary. And, you just look at what Donald Trump started within the last week, and a lot of Republicans have picked up on this in all their campaigns. What did Donald Trump tweet out the other day? I got this written down here. Well, I want to make sure I say this word for word. This is what Trump
the Clean Water Act. The Clean Water Act.
Hold on. Let me read.
Are you asking me or are you telling me?
No. I want to tell you exactly what Donald Trump tweeted here the other day. Republicans will totally protect people with pre-existing conditions. Dems will not. Vote Republican.
Wow.
You talk about revisionist history. Was it not the Republican Party who voted 70 times to repeal Obamacare, specifically trying to get rid of the pre-existing condition clause within Obamacare?
Yeah.
Dems will not? I mean, you talk about a complete and total lie.
Yeah, but do you think people are...
And just a few months ago, Donald Trump was all upset with John McCain before he passed when he came out and gave the thumbs down vote at 2 o'clock in the morning because they didn't get to repeal Obamacare and get rid of the pre-existing conditions. Now he wants to keep them?
Well, because I think people...
Maybe it's because the most recent polling data shows that 90% of Americans want pre-existing conditions kept, and health care is the number one issue in this election.
And it is, and I think here's the thing. I think people are not willing to, and I think people are not willing to have that conversation because here's the issue with it, is what people in politics think that people want is not what the average American wants, and that's hard. That's something that I think. I think that's one of the problems with it. I think that's one of the issues that you have is that the politicians think that let's say this, I hate bringing this up on the show, and I really it's not one of the ones, but I think people think that people are that abortion is a big issue to them, and it's not. It really isn't. Abortion is like 47th on the scale of what people are important about. But they make that a wedge issue. Most people don't care, and the views on it.
Whoa! I wouldn't say most people don't care.
I'm going to give you numbers. Hold on for a second because if you go there, since 1972, since Roe versus Wade has been passed, there hasn't been a change in views on abortion. Say what you want, but the numbers are against you.
No. All right. I'm not saying that people's view on abortion has changed. But you can't make a blanket statement that people don't care about abortion when they vote. There are a lot of people that do care about abortion. There are a lot of people that is what drives them to the polls. Let's be honest. People in this country do not look at the vast spectrum of issues out there when they go to the polls. We're single issue voters. We either worry about our religion, we're worried about our wallet, we're worried about the economy, we're worried about jobs, we're worried about war, we're worried about, we're worried about Medicare, health care, Social Security. We're single issue voters. We don't go in going, oh, well, this guy supports 14 of the things I care about and 8 of the things I don't. Let me weigh that. No, we go in based on one thing. Either someone we respect told us to vote for them, and we said okay, or we're voting on one particular issue. And to some people, abortion is their issue.
Yeah, but I honestly, I don't, man, I'm seeing it because I'm on a lot more liberal and I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I could be wrong about it, but I don't think that is. I think because the economy, here's the thing that has changed dramatically recently. The amount of wealth that has gone into the system has just absolutely wrecked any other conversation that we could have. Absolutely wrecked it. There's no conversation that people can have that outweighs it. I mean, it just, the economy for most people is going well. Job growth is up. Median income is up. The only thing that has gone down is FANG. The FANG stocks have been adjusted, which is what's going to happen regardless who is in president.
Well, I would say this, and this is where I think politicians fail, and people who analyze this stuff fail. The economy is going well. It is. It's going well, not for everyone, though. That's just a reality. It's going well for those that invest in the stock market. Not everybody can afford to invest in the stock market. And those that can't rely on companies that are doing well to trickle down the money. And not all companies are doing it yet. I mean, you just look at Amazon, who just weeks ago said they're going to raise their minimum wage at Amazon to $15 an hour. And everybody jumped up and down. and then the very next day they took away half the benefits
Sure.
to cover the $15 wage.
Sure.
And everybody was all up in arms. I mean, the economy, when the economy is doing well, it's doing well for some, not all. Let's be honest. Trickle-down economics is a theory that has never been proven.
Well, it's not that it's trickled down. Part of it is too. It is that it's what the economy is always going to be protected for certain classes. That is the economy is going to be protected for certain people. It always is. Business owners are always going to get a blanket exemption. They are, because you can't write a law to help Amazon as a corporation and not help tech disposal. You can't do that. I mean, you can't have exclusion. But I think that here's the thing in Ohio. I give you in Columbus, Ohio, the unemployment rate is 3.7%. That is a negative unemployment rate. That means that every willing person that has a job can work. Here's part of the problem.
Well.
No.
George, you're completely wrong there.
Anytime.
Let's be honest. The unemployment rate is based on those. It doesn't account for people that have just stopped looking for jobs.
Yes
now,
and no.
I am not going to take away. I am not going to take away the fact that yes, unemployment is low. Yes, more people are working now. Yes, but if people were out of work for a period of time and still haven't found work, what is it? After 1 year, they don't account for them in the
18 months.
18 months, they don't account for them, right?
Yeah, I understand that, but what I'm saying about that is, though, when you're talking about that, when you're talking about those things, benefits have also declined. That is one of benefits have declined. Worker participation has gone up. So those two dynamics.
When you say benefits have declined,
okay. I covered this, and I'm going to tell you this. This is going to be a very complex issue, but this is the stock market and the federal bond rate. And we covered this, but I'll give you a short synopsis.
No, all right. So
hold on. Hear me.
You're not talking about tangible benefits that somebody receives at a job.
Right. Hear me out, and please let me finish this. When you talk about benefits, you're not talking about unemployment benefits. You're talking about liquidation of 401ks and supplemental income vehicles. So, for example, whether they had a SEP, a self-employment plan, whether they had a whatever bonds, funds, annuities, all those. The liquidation factor, if you go to Standard & Poor's, is at an all-time high, which means that people aren't liquidating those funds to pay their bills, and especially the Roth IRAs, the 401ks, the regular IRAs. The liquidation rate has gone down. So that means that people that had money for retirement, for those kind of benefits, has gone down. That usually happens, and this is a model that originated in the 50s. Usually when that happens, it is not always. There's a couple times that it's happened, and in '72 when they passed ERISA, it really has happened. Since then, has been a buoyancy marker of who is retiring. When are people retiring? People that are leaving, that have left the workplace, aren't diluting funds or liquidating funds to pay bills, and that is the one sign of the economy that nobody is speaking about. And I think the inverse rate of the bond market, that's where we have to worry, because the short-term bonds right now, their interest rates are outpacing the long-term bonds, which means people will divert capital from the stock market into short-term bonds because the yield rate is as equal. So that has led to recessions as a model in the last 70 years. That's where we need to be careful of. And we're close. We're not there. But it could happen in the next 6 to 8 months if we're not careful. And that's why I think that Trump was worried about the Fed raising the rates. And that is one of those things we have to worry about. And it doesn't always happen. And I'm not saying that it is going to happen. But those are models that those are models that the big investment firms use as metrics. Does that explain it, or am it?
No, you're right. And I mean, listen, you look throughout history. Every time the economy does well, interest rates go up to a degree. Are we ever going to get back to what we were in the 70s, where it was like 18% home mortgage rates? No. But you look throughout history, whether it's the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, there have always been things, crumbs, that were thrown to the middle and lower middle class to subsidize their income, so to speak. The 80s, anybody could get credit. It was a fucking credit bonanza, right? Credit cards left and right.
Right.
The late 90s, early 2000s, all these interest-only loans. People getting into properties that were way beyond their means because they weren't worried about the balloon payment in 5 years, right?
Right.
Then after that, it was, all these banks are going to give you these lines of credit so you can go, up to half your paycheck negative every couple of weeks in your bank account, right?
Right.
Which amazes me that's still in practice today. That just boggles my mind that Congress allows this to happen.
Well, I just don't think that they understand how in-depth it is.
I mean, there are people that pay thousands of dollars every year in negative fees to banks.
You're right.
Just to survive.
I understand it, and that personal credit has gone up, and part of the reason because of that is that credit is a big business. It's $1 trillion business in this country, especially revolving credit, and that's something why you can't judge the 50s because prior to the 50s there was no credit cards, and so that was a golden unicorn of. That was a golden unicorn of economic factors. Prior to the charge card of the 50s, credit didn't exist. I mean, you had store credit, but not bank credit, and that's a completely different issue. And I think,
right.
And I think part of it long term has got to be we have got, as a whole, we have got to be able to talk to each other like we're talking about now, about really complex issues. And there are times when I've tried to explain the long-term bond rate and the short-term bond rate, which is what has always led to either growth or collapse. 90% of the people I've talked to don't understand it. They just don't understand it, and that is scary. And I think
that's because we live in a society today that lives on 30-second sound bites, doesn't read anything, doesn't truly educate themselves on the issues,
right?
Relies on a meme or a headline or a talking head to tell them what to think.
And I think and that's the issue. And I think that's one of the where you're definitely correct on that. And I think part of it is we don't want to. We're too lazy. We're not fighting anymore. One of the things that I pointed out right now is that you can go buy a big screen TV. You could go buy a big screen TV. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Vizio is coming out with a 46-inch TV for Black Friday this year. 46-inch TV for $249.
Mm-hmm.
$249. and that is their law. That's not their lost leader, but it's their leader. That in itself just shows you how our economy is just moving. It's just the fact that we're a consumer-driven economy, and that is what is that is.
This is what gets me. We have gone from a society that truly worried about our credit score and paying our bills on time to a society that goes, oh, you know what, I'll spend half my paycheck on an $800 TV and I'll just catch up my bills next month.
Right.
I mean, that's where we've gotten.
Right. Because it's so easy to catch up, though. I mean, and here's the thing. It costs, since 1988, gas costs less, food costs less, TVs cost less. I mean, when you're not struggling and some consumer goods are cheaper, what do you worry about? I mean, seriously. I mean, what do you worry about when you have consumerism and you have the debate on, if gas is relatively cheaper as the McDouble, the 2-for-2 McDoubles at McDonald's are the cheapest caloric intake in the history of the world. Do you know that?
Right. But here's what scares me is that the same people that will do that still are paying a bank note on their car, have never truly owned a car because they're constantly paying the bank. They don't own their own home. They don't own anything. They have no assets, period. There are a lot of
people. Yeah, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of people, too. The one thing that I have read in this, and again, I have to relay the numbers. The amount of personal wealth that has gone up in this country is overwhelming to an all-time high. I don't know that I think there's a part of the economy that is that. Sure, no doubt about it. But is it all of the economy? No, because personal wealth has gone up tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is one of the things that it. And I think here's the point. Me and you, the conversations that me and you are having are the conversations we need to have with other members of society and say, listen, these are things that are going to be important. Let's be civil to each other because at the end of the day, we all agree on the same thing. We want a place to live. We want to have a decent home life. We want our team to be in the World Series, and yours isn't. And I mean, you want to be in the,
you go back to what John Kennedy said. We all inhabit this earth. We all want the same things, But
we all don't want.
The problem is that people are so blinded with rage these days.
And I think it's because they're bored. I think that it is because they're bored. They have nothing to do, so they look at things to be. I remember in the 70s, we weren't outraged by a lot of things because we're too damn hungry to eat. I mean, seriously, I remember in the 70s, my dad worked at, he was unemployed for a while, and we grew up on the west side of Columbus, which is a relatively poor side. We used to go get government cheese, and there was a place by the Westinghouse plant that used to go get. Which
let's put this in context though, just so everybody knows. George loves government cheese.
Oh, I do. Oh my God, have you ever had? And we had the thin slice Wonder Bread, dude. It was unreal. I mean, we had the government butter, government cheese, and the grilled cheese sandwiches you used to make. They were just. It was, the taste of it'd be the tears of liberals. I mean, it was magnificent, and But I'm just telling you, that's what I grew up on, and we didn't have extras. We had a TV in the house, and we had one TV. We had 4, 6, 10, and PBS. We had 2 PBS. We had 5 channels. That was it. And we didn't have. I didn't get my first VCR until after I got out into the Marine Corps, and that was in '84. We didn't have tape. I mean, it was, and that was a big purchase back then. So, I think that with consumerism, with the amount of consumer goods we have in this country, it just leads to we're bored and we want to be irritated because we don't have nothing else to do. We're not, I look at it that you know why we didn't have the EPA 70 years ago? Because we were starving. So, the EPA in the 40s, people were dying of malnutrition in America. Not that they're not dying today, but you actually had famines in America in the 40s. The Dust Bowl of, when was the Dust Bowl? 1931 in Kansas? I mean, you had things like that. So today, there are some people that are starving in America, but very few. And, me and you never missed a meal.
I don't know. You would be surprised.
There
are still communities in this country where schools will make sandwiches and send them home with kids on Fridays because they're afraid they're not.
Oh yeah, there's places in Appalachia there.
There are places in North Carolina. There are places in Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, Northern Florida that this happens.
Well, and I think that's part of it. I have one of the things I have is I have another gentleman coming on in the second part of the hour he is a Customs and Border Patrol agent and a bodyguard for some people that we're going to have conversations with something you didn't want to be involved in. So can we have a final thought so I can bring him on so it doesn't irritate?
Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. Give me your final thought.
I'm just curious to get a gauge as to where you think the midterm election is going to go.
Tom, I can't tell you. I don't think. Here's the thing. I think the House goes 51. I think the Senate goes 52-48 Republican, and I think the House stays Republican, and the Democrats pick up maybe 19 seats, maybe. That's the best I can come up with because I'm looking at that's it. Hello.
Fair enough.
All right.
Hello.
It's always a pleasure, and we'll catch you next time. You sound check. Make sure you're going to be heard.
All right, no problem.
Should be heard.
Chuffy. So,
hey, how's it going, man?
Oh, pretty good. I just need to make sure you're live. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Hey,
Hello?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's what I want to do. Sound check. Okay. Can you sound check? Let's get to the point. Can be heard. I know that you were listening in a little bit, and part of I know some of the conversation was on subject matter that you might not have an interest in. How you doing tonight? But here's
I'm doing good. Hey,
here's one of the things that I bring up, and me and you have had these conversations numerous times. That's what I want to do. Sound check. Okay. So let's get to the point. The amount of I know that you were listening in a little bit, and part of that is going on in America today is subject matter that you. Okay. Group is, whether it's on the right or on the left. You have talked about they hijack the message, and all of a sudden you're fighting to tell the truth instead of trying to fix the issue. And I think that's what's happening today, and that's people don't have a clear and concise message. And it's easy. One of the things that really bothered me in this last get hijacked by 60 days, and it doesn't matter what every conversation we've had. We don't want to tell the truth. They hijack the message, and all of a sudden you're fighting to tell the truth instead of trying to fix what do you think about that? What do you think about is going on? I think that's what's happening today, and that's what scares me. Can you hear me? And
I hear you fine.
One of the things that really bothered me in this last 60 days, say anything, or you want to especially of every conversation tell the virtues of we don't want to tell the truth how single malt scotch is the best scotch.
Well, yeah, of course.
So, what do you think about that? What do you think about is going on?
The best. Of course, single malt.
And can you hear me?
Best. Yes. Yeah, I hear you fine.
Well,
Okay.
You want to say anything, or you want to, just tell the virtues of how single
So
malt Scotch.
tell
is
me
the
what
best Scotch.
you see the stuff that is going on now, right?
Well, yeah, of course.
Why do you think we're
Single
hesitant to
malt's
tell the truth?
Always the best. Of course, single malt's
We've got a
always
delay
the best.
going
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Well, do me this. I'm going to hang up on
Okay.
you. Call me back on landline, right? Or call me back on my calling number. Okay.
Tell me what you see the stuff that is going on now, right? Why do you think we're hesitant to tell the truth?
We've got a delay going on.
All right. Well, do me this. I'm going to hang up on you. Call me back on landline, right? Or call me back on my call-in number. Okay. So that happens every once in a while. I got to tell you this. From broadcasting over the years, we have had. Skype is not the best platform, and one of the things that happens is that with Skype, Skype broadcasts in packets, and so when we're trying to live feed, happens repeatedly, and we've had this issue before. So one of the things with me and Shuff have talked about in the past is we talk about misdirection. And we did a video on the Vegas shooting, and one of the things we talked about was the misdirection of the investigation and how it just doesn't sound right. And because of that, people, one of the reasons that conspiracy theories become mainstream, to say the least, is because facts just don't add up. So let's give you an example. Let's just use the Kennedy assassination, and we've used this before. Why they don't add up? Now sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Lee Harvey Oswald was an average marksman. He was a Marine marksman, and one of the reasons that it didn't add up for a lot of people was that he made 3 shots in around 12 seconds with a not a necessarily good rifle, and hit a moving target at Daley Plaza. To a lot of people that are technically sound or technically they know, doesn't make any sense. And I want to bring this out, why this is important about telling the truth. One of the reasons that people with stolen valor get outed is that they fill in the gaps with what they don't know. So I'll give you an example. I don't know very many people that in a 4-year enlistment get to go to 2 schools. I just don't. I very rarely have met people like that. The military just doesn't work that way. So if you tell me, for example,
And yet,
in the Marine Corps and all the years I've ever been around Marines or surrounded by Marines, I've only met 2 recon scout snipers. 2 recon, they were both recon Marines and scout snipers. 2. And that's been since 1984. I've met 2 of them. Those are completely different skill sets, and the chances of you doing that on a 4-year enlistment are just absolutely...
and yet...
Hold on, let me finish. And yet people, when they say, what did you do in the Marine, when they lie, I was a recon scout sniper. I was a recon sniper. It just doesn't happen. And so here's the thing that me and you, Shuff, have talked about numerous times. People fill in what they don't know with conjecture. And so here's a thing that, that me and you have talked about all the time. If you don't know the message, if you don't know where the message is crafted, you'll believe anything. If you sit there and tell me that, I don't know, come up with some of the nonsense you hear, that you've seen, especially with social media, it just doesn't make sense to people that actually have done it or have the critical thinking behind it. And me and Shuff did a show. We did a show about separating the kids. One of the things that me and James, and Shuffy is a former Customs Border Patrol agent, and one of the things that we brought up was that when we were in Kosovo we ran a
You're
UN
looking to see if the kids are being trafficked,
a refugee camp. We had to separate kids from their parents.
I mean,
we had to separate not only kids, but we had to separate adults. We didn't have the biometrics back then, but we had to do, I think we called them welfare checks back then. What was the?
You're looking to see if the kids are being trafficked or the women are being trafficked. I mean, it ran the gambit,
right? And you had you had those checks, but here's what people did not bring up or wouldn't say that when they jumped from point A to B from A to C without knowing what B was. And one of the things that I brought up, and we got into, not me and you, but me and another person that got into this, is something you brought up, was that a family Bible was an accepted form of a birth certificate for families traveling. And I brought that up to somebody, and they're like, no, it's not. And so if you don't know...
Yes, it is.
No, I'm joking. I know it is. I'm just saying I'm using that as an example because if people don't know. And so one of the issues behind it was people fill in what they don't know with conjecture. They fill in what they don't know with either conjecture, rhetoric,
and we talked, and we have
misaligned energy.
Folks.
And I think that's one of the problems with it. And I don't know how we fix that. I really don't. But, pine away on some of the things that you've seen that, irritates you.
Why am I mind up?
Well, I'll tell you a couple things.
Yeah,
and we talked, and we have been proven right, folks. If you go to Sword.9, my channel, I'm mirroring
about all of it, and it's going to be proven even more right.
Veterans Podcast Network or Veterans.
The interesting part.
Why am I mind up? And
God,
I hate getting old. Yeah, Veterans Radio
Syndicate.
But
one of the things that we brought
anyways, the thing that
there is such a thing as a false flag.
You're right about all of it,
and
it's going to be proven even more right later. So. The interesting part with people who don't understand things or that they just don't get what's going on, there is such a thing as a false flag.
Of course there is.
And, of course, you and I both have participated in one.
Well,
let's
be honest about this too. And when you think that the government isn't capable of doing a false flag, let me point this out: the USS Pueblo was a false flag. Now there are others that have been proven across the time. Let's use another one that is even more of a false flag that you probably might disagree with me, but I doubt that you will. There are people that have argued that Waco was a false flag because what the Clinton administration said was that David Koresh set fire to his own compound.
False flag.
Right, and he didn't. Yeah. We both know that.
I know. I'm saying...
And OKC, I mean, we can go back...
Hold on.
Wendy S. Painting.
Hold on. 1996 Olympic bombing in the square at the Olympics. Richard Jewell was
false flag. He was set up. Yeah.
And so when people say, "Oh, there's no," you're just a concern. No, is we understand it. Here's the thing: we want an answer for certain things, and if we don't find an answer, we're okay with conjecture.
Yeah.
And it's just like the people that I don't know, whatever you want to call it, that the algae story that's going on in Florida. I talked to one of my friends who actually lives there, and he says the water's clear. It's just something that's made up, and it doesn't. And here's the one thing about the false flag. Hear me out on this, and me and you might disagree on this. It doesn't always have to be for that somebody is killed in it. Tesla just released its. Here's the thing about Tesla in a financial world. Just released its quarterly earnings and absolutely demolished any of the narrative that they were hurting for money. Just demolished it. And so when people think of a false flag, they think that somebody's got to die, and it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be that. It just has to be that you're creating a narrative in the place to divert energy in an argument. That's what a false flag is.
Yes, that's exactly. Well, a false flag classically was a ship that was coming in to do bad stuff to another ship would raise the flag of that nation.
Right.
Okay, that's the classical explanation for a false flag.
Well, and they also pirates would also would fly a flag of the green quarantine flag was always a popular one. And there was another one.
Not flown in, but flown on.
Oh, what was the other flag that they used to use? It was the Christian.
I get what you're saying. No, here's
come on.
Symbology. Yeah.
No. There's a Christian. There's a Christian flag that was flown in by the in the 1600s. That was flown on ships.
Not flown in, but flown on the vessel.
Right, and it was
sent out to all these people.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. No, here's the issue.
But they
we now have two things running at once because the first thing didn't work.
And
the fraudulent fake bombings being sent out to all these people,
whether this guy
that didn't work. And their narrative didn't match. But they had to throw a bone, make, it look like it's not just white people doing this, right?
A white nationalist or
and here's the disgusting thing.
Who was, and if people doubt
we will never know whether this guy that did what he did in the synagogue, the abhorrent thing that he did there,
escorted
was really, a white nationalist or somebody who was, and if people doubt this, Pamela Geller's thing, this has been proven when she did the Draw Muhammad contest.
Right.
The FBI basically escorted the two guys that went in and got killed.
Right. Of course. Freedom. I got you. Right. Exactly. No, it was a complete setup, but it was done by the FBI. Look at most of the FBI fucking things that have happened. They're always setups. They find some in Ohio, in Dayton, Ohio. The proud Buckeye state we're from. We've allowed the FBI to set up a retarded guy who, by all manner of everything, was retarded, and said, oh, well, we'll give you the money. We'll give you the money to move out of your house because you're living in your mom's house, so we want to make you look stable. And then the next thing we're going to do, besides that, is we're going to give you the money to buy the guns at the gun dealer. Yeah. No. The rank and file are fine. Yeah. We're good. Yeah. Yes. Steinbeck, yeah. Yeah. Right. It was, yeah, it was probably more than that. Yeah. You become what you despise. You do become what you despise, and that's the whole problem with the SJWs, is they don't have any self-reflection to realize right.
Transactions is that if you take a look at, let's say, whatever, I don't know what financial transaction it is, but
and this is rocket
if you
science.
Look at where the energy behind it comes from and where the money comes from, you follow the money 9 out of 10 times, it leads you to the source.
This is the
exactly.
And I think,
and this is rocket science now.
Vegas,
well, but
George, it's always about money, brother. This is the thing you and I talked about with.
You and I still keep an eye on it.
But what happened in Vegas, which notice that disappeared.
Yeah, pretty much.
Everything disappears. Everything disappears.
What happened when
still keep an eye on it?
Right, but here's a year later, you can't, here's the thing that me and you brought up, and this is something that the FBI has, one of the things that me and Shuff brought up was a marker. And I'm going to tell you something that this is, like I said, if I ever say something on the show and you guys don't believe, Google it. Google it, look it up. 9 out of 10 times it's available on the net. There's some things that aren't available, but we don't. I don't make stuff up just to hear, to incite a narrative. One of the things that I brought up during the Vegas shooting, and I did it on a couple different shows.
You don't need to tell all this.
I used to gamble a lot,
yeah.
And I used to play. I used to bet on football. I played blackjack. I played poker, and I got away from that lifestyle.
You don't need to tell all this, brother.
I know, but yeah. I've had experience in it. Here's one of the things that you don't. The Vegas shooter got a marker for $250,000 from the casino.
Yep.
Now, my question to this is, if you add up the amount of money that the guy made, and he's a retired government worker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
$250,000 on a government
It's because they're being
stipend or whatever retired. That doesn't add up. That just doesn't add up. And for you to
the cops who went in there,
go ahead.
Said,
it's because they're being funded because he was a gun runner.
Right.
Here's the thing: nobody wants to hear the truth. What were the first things that the cops who went in there said? It looked like a gun deal gone bad.
Right.
Guess what? It was. You know that I have told you forever, and we're not going to get into why I know this, but you know I told you with Christopher Stevens, he was the worst gun dealer. And imagine this, after our conversation and stuff, Adnan Khashoggi's nephew gets snuffed, and Khashoggi died too, right?
Well, the dad has died. The dad has been dead.
I know what you're saying. I'm just saying.
Remember that
his nephew died.
Right.
So I'm thinking they're eliminating trace evidence. And remember, where the guns were shipped was to Turkey.
Right.
Remember that.
And here's the thing: he died.
They're not guns. They're not guns. They're missiles. Let's be very clear on what was being moved during the last administration and who they were moved to. ISIS. Oh wait, let's call it ISIS. Let's do the real nomenclature on this. It was the U.S. doing it. CIA versus our guys who were on the ground, the SF guys. So, and you know where I just came back from again.
Right, but here's one of the things.
You know, I've lived a quarter of my life, and I'm 50
in the Middle East.
In that shithole.
And here's one thing that I bring up, and let me say this, okay? And this is the same thing that, why we die on weird hills. Adnan Khashoggi was arrested in Switzerland, and he went to court for helping Imelda Marcos. We're not trying to be conspiracy theories. There's that. Yeah. And in 1985, this is I posted this the other day, where the left clamored to him because he was a journalist. And I don't understand why it's this. Why it was any other guy I would have been on, but this guy was on. In 1985, there was an attack on American Marines in El Salvador called the Zena Rosa attack. 4 American Marines that worked at the embassy, 2 American businessmen, 3 El Salvadoran national businessmen were shot and killed in an ambush stop. The FMNF was responsible for it. Now, they're a political party in El Salvador today, but at that time they were a French terrorist group. They got their weapons from the Iran-Contra. Now, if you want to read about them, there's a book about Reagan and the terrorism. They're mentioned in there, and they got weapons from...
Shit, there's a goddamn movie on it. And I know who it is.
I know, but here, hold on.
Tom Cruise starred in it.
Right. So these guys got weapons from Khashoggi in the Iran-Contra affair. His family benefited from it. Now, the Dodi Fayed, who was engaged or supposedly engaged to Princess Di, was his nephew. Princess Diana was Adnan Khashoggi's nephew. They didn't make. Here's the thing. For the people, and I bring this up as a conversation, you don't work for the Saudi family in the embassies unless you're an agent. There's no. Hold on. Let me finish. And you cannot work for the Saudi royal kingdom as an agent in any part in an embassy without being a part of the Saudi Arabian Security Agency, which is I don't know what it's are equivalent to maybe the NSA or these. I don't think it's quite the CIA, but it's up there.
It'd be more like our DIA.
Yeah, the DIA and everybody, and you don't work that you don't get to be a foreign attaché without being an agent. Both Dodi Fayed and Jamal Khashoggi worked in the embassy. I'm not making this up. And people are saying, oh, he was just a journalist. No, he was not just a journalist. You don't get stationed abroad in an embassy as an aide-de-camp without being an agent. That just doesn't happen. Here's the issue.
Somebody who's connected.
Somebody's connected.
Somebody.
And
it's no different than the Strongsville boys from up in northern Ohio coming down here. Remember the Italian?
Yep.
You're a Greek. I'm half Italian. You know who my father is.
Right.
You know who my mother is. I mean, this is the thing we used to have in America, is we knew who everybody's parentage was.
Well, and here's the thing.
Your father,
right,
was the only person who said, and it was only because he knew who my upa was, my opo,
right,
whatever you want to call him, my grandfather. And he goes, this is the only, and he said it was not when it was derogatory.
Right.
It was when it was a factual thing. This is the only Nazi that I've ever liked.
Well, and I
was a kid.
But here's the issue, though.
I was a fucking kid.
But the difference is this. And let's be honest about the conversation about this. There are terms that have been hijacked over the years.
I know you are.
Into what means what has changed dramatically. So, for example, are you going to say, let's be honest about this too. I'm not defending the Nazis, and let's
I know you won't.
And let's be honest about this. But if here's an issue that we bring up.
I guess
Oscar Schindler was a Nazi.
Right.
And so when
how many people do you say?
1,200, 1,300, something like that. I don't know.
Okay. So I guess there's some variance in that.
And so Erwin Rommel was a Nazi. The problem that you have is that Thomas Jefferson, and this is the one thing that I bring up, that Thomas Jefferson over the years was against doing the type of government we have today, which is a dual party government.
Yes.
And one of the reasons has been, and I'll tell you something, and I want you guys to listen to this, and for a lot of you, it might go over your head, but he never wanted us to have a standing army.
No, he didn't.
And one of the reasons...
And yet he got us involved in the first foreign entanglement,
too.
Which he also didn't want to do. But our Marines, our brothers, look, the line marches on.
Well, but here's the thing there, Shuff. At the end of the day, one of the things that we've had is, when Obama was president, one of the things that happened with Obama as president, it was Northrop Grumman came out with the drone, and the drone. And it's a piece of hardware that is incredible. Let me just say this: it's an incredible piece of hardware. The optics, and everything on it is just And one of the things that happened was we were able to engage enemies and targets that we weren't able to do so before without putting American servicemen in harm's way or being harm's way. It gets addictive. Let me tell you, war. Don't let anybody kid you. War gets addictive.
War is an addiction. No. Let me hold on. For those that don't understand the addiction, there's a reason why I've lived 1/4 of my life in a war zone.
In a war zone.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with it. It changes our perspective on how to interact with others, because
yes,
and the one issue with it is that when I did the show on when I brought up this subject on Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus united the world. Had two species that were isolated from each other for 10,000 years. The East and West had, for 10,000 years, roughly, since the land bridge over the Bering Straits was. He brought the East and West.
He even landed on the wrong continent.
Right, and here's one of the other things that people, and this is a problem with why revisionist history can take hold.
Oh, but it's hold on.
No, it's not the flat Earth. Yeah, of course it's a flat Earth. But
no,
one of the things
I go by the cone Earth.
But one of the things that Christopher Columbus did was he hung a couple of his men that mistreated the islanders. Nobody brings that up. One of the things that happened,
they won't.
When you have this conversation was that Christopher Columbus united the two halves of the earth, and it's the most significant thing in human history. Now, what's happened afterwards? You want to say that it was bad that they colonized? Well,
yes.
Weaker cultures, when they run into a stronger culture, always get decimated. And
always do.
And the stronger culture will pick those viable artifacts from the weaker culture, take them, and discard the rest. Here's an example.
Yes.
The Aztecs were sacrificing humans to the sun god, so the sun god would come up. Is that acceptable? No. And so one of the things that happen is it's easy to go back and revision history if you want to make it fit a narrative. The problem that happened in Americas, and this is where no one, with the exception of a few people, when they say American Indians weren't homogenous. You had the Aztecs, you had the Incas, you had there were numerous different tribes. Some of those tribes, and again, unless you go and read history, you're not gonna, were white. They were European, and they've had models where they've held European DNA. And
Elizabeth, Warren.
Yeah,
is 1/100,000, and if you go back long enough, she got her little Indian credo from people that were from a different country.
Right.
It wasn't the U.S. It was when there was the land bridge.
Well,
look,
and here's
everybody wants to talk their smack. It's become disgusting, and honestly,
it's a dishonest conversation. And one of the things
it's a dishonest conversation because all of a sudden everybody has some victimhood. I'm sorry, but my mother and your father and everybody who we grew up around, did you ever hear any of them say we're victims?
No. It's not the Western.
The last guy you had on, I was a union iron worker putting myself through college.
Right.
All of his union stuff, and he sounds like a good guy.
Yes, and
he probably really believes everything he's saying. But Patco, when Reagan shut down Patco, there was a reason. Because they were putting in hazard
they left the
our national
to make sure our flights came
air flights
and safe.
I'm saying say that last part again.
They were putting in hazard our national air flight.
Right.
Because they struck. They left the terminal.
Right.
To make sure our flights came in and safely.
As a wedge.
Yeah, it wasn't. He didn't. And here's the thing: Reagan didn't just do it arbiarly. There was national security reasons, and at the same time, he said, "Listen, if you guys are going to leave, you're not going to use the safety of your fellow citizens as a negotiation point.
And as a wedge.
Yeah,
as a wedge. And he also allowed some of them to come back.
That's what is not. That's not what is not. But not being said.
It's not talked about. Yeah, because they were professional.
Right.
Oh, I know that.
You know, if I'm a professional, and I don't know if I am or not, you be the judge.
By the way,
I keep coming back from these shit places.
By the way, and I know I just want to point out one other thing. Ted Kennedy was a military policeman.
It saddens.
Oh, I know that. I already knew that, man.
I know. I'm just saying.
He just dirtbagged military police.
And
I can't imagine. Anyways, I don't want to get into that with him.
No, I'm saying
it saddens the entire. When I was in and when he was in, we were 95 Bravos.
Right.
And that right there.
But but Shuff, it goes back to this. It goes back about being able to have conversations. The first thing you need to be able to have a conversation, you need to at least understand the subject matter. Most people don't want to understand subject matter. They want to feel. They want to argue on the way they feel about a subject. And
most people want their cummies too, and they also want their little.
They want their what?
Whatever's
over
their cummies.
Nothing.
They want their cummies. They want their fills.
Yeah.
They want to get that in. I think you said that. Your other guy. The dopamine hit over nothing.
Well, and
it's all bullshit.
But think about this. Here's a second. Here is one of the things to point out in it that
they're destroying
one of the issues that's happened is when you are talking about the social the social justice warriors. They're not replacing what they're fixing with something better. They're just destroying what's there, and that's
destroying what's there.
And that's the issue that I have with it. If you sit there and talk about some of the things that conservatives have done, the conservatives, you're arguing about, well, they don't care about this, they don't care about that. I was like, well, wait a second. The conservatives have said to a couple things, hey, listen, let's fix this in a manner that works. One of the issues has been, that the argument about the trickle-down economy, okay?
Well, trickle-down's bullshit. It always has been since Reagan.
Yeah. Right, but here's what the expectation is, though, that Shuffy. Here's the expectation, and the Democrats will not address this ad nauseum. They want to raise the minimum wage. They've always wanted to raise the minimum wage. Do you know why? Because it has an influx of capital towards the government. Now, instead of... And here's the thing.
Yes.
In areas of the United States where Democrats have led, and it's not, and I'm not beating up on the Democrats. What I'm saying is this: Democrats have a tendency to become statists. Okay.
Yes.
And when statists take over an area, and statists believes that the government should take care of it, regulation kills business. It always has. There's no. There has never been a time that regulation doesn't kill business. There's a tendency on the Democratic side to put in measures to stop business. You needed this regulation and that regulation. New York City is a prime example. New York City has had more business closures in the last few years due to the fact that you just can't run a business.
Same with California.
Well, California's a different. Hold on a second. California doesn't, and I'm going to say this, and please see the difference I'm saying. New York City doesn't tax you to death. They fine you to death. Okay, there's a difference.
That's what. Yeah.
California taxes you to death. There's a big difference. Okay. New York City gives you.
I get that,
and that's a big difference when it comes to your approach on how to fix stuff.
What they call the seed.
And that is where.
Go ahead. National Socialism.
The one problem that nobody looks at, okay, even with this last guy who did the synagogue thing, whatever. Right,
but the left doesn't want to see
what they fail to see
no
is that NatSoc is National Socialism.
Piece of shit was. That is
still left wing,
socialism.
But the left doesn't want to see it. They think they're fighting against the right. No,
people can
pure NatSoc.
And
that's what that
say,
piece of shit was.
This is not this.
They're
saying
that is socialism.
This is the bullshit.
I just don't get where people can make their own little decisions and say, "Oh, this is not this. This is not this," and yet they're saying it's that.
Right. Well, I think that
bullshit.
I think the problem is with it is that let me say this. I think one of the reasons that you have, I'm going to say this, and this is where you're not going to, you're not going to think before you answer on this one. I don't think the right has done a good enough job of selling what they call on selling capitalism, because the attraction of socialism is so great that capitalism has worked in every part of the country, in every part of the world, regardless of where, regardless of where it has been tried. Okay. Do you understand what I mean by that?
No, it hasn't.
Right.
No, it hasn't.
Capitalism
it didn't work in Venezuela.
Capitalism.
No,
hold on.
No.
Capitalism has worked in.
Socialism.
Right.
No, I said. I'm sorry.
Said
okay, capitalism has worked in every part of the world,
right?
Regardless of how corrupt the government or the people that have ran it are.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who it is.
No, you're right. You're right.
So
you're right.
It doesn't matter whether it has been in Nigeria, South Africa, in any part of the world that capitalism has been tried, even if bad actors are carrying it out, it has worked. Okay, and it has worked. Socialism has never worked, even if you've had noble
anywhere,
even if you've had noble actors carrying it out. Why? Because it's fundamentally flawed.
It is flawed.
And so one of the things that I say to people is the attraction of socialism has to be the only thing I can understand. The only thing I can figure out is that is the only reason that socialism is attracted to people.
Issue.
I don't know who, whatever you want to call them, the leftists, the socialists, whoever you want to call them, is because they haven't been taught good enough of what capitalism stands, and that's the only thing I can think of.
No. There's a bigger issue that people fail to realize.
Okay.
There was a wall at one time. At one time, you and I served during that wall time.
Okay, at one time.
Brother, you have to remember, there was a division of socialism, communism, and democracy, and capitalism. Okay, at one time there was a delineable wall. It no longer exists. These poor kids and the younger dudes, they do not understand it, because my son when he went to school, he was like, Dad, I'm doing a Cold War thing, and I've done a lot of things at his school talking about different issues. And I'm like, well, tell him I'll come in tomorrow and explain what it looked like, you know.
Right.
And I've done the Cold War, I've done the Gulf War, because you know that's
right.
You know,
but you don't think but you don't think it's because they weren't taught honestly about capitalism, or do you think it's just there's something more sinister?
I don't think. Yeah, I think it's something more sinister. I think. Next day he comes home and he's like, yeah, my teacher said we're done with it, and he said we didn't even cover it again today. So that meant he got 1 day on the Cold War. 50 fucking years. They get 1 day of lessons on it.
Wow.
And you know the town I'm from, you would think they'd spend some time.
I have no issues with
this
is I worked with.
A sad
but what I will
issue.
Say is they were
and
I'm the old guy again.
Folks, and I talked to veterans when I was over there last time. Good dude.
The beginning of this
I have no issues with anybody I worked with.
Now I'm the
but what I will say is I'm the old guy again. I'm the old guy out. You know, I was the young guy at 30-something during the beginning of this bullshit. You know.
Final thoughts, brother?
Well, I think the other part
I'm the
of
old guy.
I think part of it also it dictates the fact that I just don't think, you know, I don't think people want to be told the truth, and I think that is what it boils down to. Anyway, we're getting close to the end of the broadcast. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts, brother. Love you. Thank you for being around. The last gentleman, I think he had some good points.
I still could see through it.
I'm not gonna
hopefully, you know, he'll
throw smoke on him.
Trump is not a Republican. He's
Saddened
a New York Democrat.
That
and he needs to realize,
you know, I was a union guy, and
people are older.
I still can see through it, but hopefully, you know, he'll learn. Trump is not a Republican. He's a New York Democrat, and he needs to realize that maybe people who are older probably see something a little different. And that'll be my final thoughts.
It's always a pleasure, Shuffy, and we'll talk on the next time. Thank you for coming on the Bear News. And
all right, God bless.
Right. Bye. And with that being said, I know the conversation's a little, you know, sometimes it goes a little deep, and I think that in closing, I'm going to say this. I think a lot of it is that people want to hear what they want to hear. And they don't want to listen or to be engaged in stuff that they don't want to hear. And in saying that, I think it's also important that people have conversations on those arguments. One of the things I want to close on, and this is because this is important. Today is Ohi Day. And one of the things that today is the 28th of October, and the Italians wanted to invade Greece, and they wanted the Greeks to surrender. And the Greek prime minister at the time was Ioannis Metaxas. He was a pretty good guy, actually. He was, you know, for the time. He only uttered, you know, when the Italians wanted him to lay down their the weapons and surrender, he said, "Ohi, this is Ohi Day." No, and it's the same thing happened in World War II when the general and the just replied nuts to the German commander. We have to at least move forward in conversations to say that not everything is the way you think it's going to be. You're going to have a difference of opinion. You're going to have a difference of ideology. You're going to have a difference of exactly where and why something happened. And what's important to you is to say this: we have to cooperate with you, and we have to listen to each other. The best form of government is when you have groups cooperating together for the betterment of its citizens. We don't have that right now, and a lot of it is because we have compelling interests trying to fight to the top and get there. And with that, I say it doesn't. There's not much difference between the left and the right. And in saying so, I will close with this and say, listen, if you don't listen to somebody now and you're in charge, what happens when they're in charge and they force you to listen to their ideology? It's going to wreak havoc. And with that, I bid you all good night. Thank you for listening to the Bear News and supporting the Veteran Radio Syndicate community. And we will catch you here my next show on Thursday, The Warrior Wallet and the Bar.
It's time for the Bear News with George Pardos.